Hitler he could speak to things like inflation, right, which really existed. But he also appealed to the irrational emotions of Germans, right? He sought out scapegoats, Jews, Roma, disabled people, homosexuals, and so on, right? I mean, that's also there in Bin Laden too. I mean, the idea of an anti-Semitism, the constant flagging of Zionists and Crusaders. It's a kind of shotgun approach to a search for followers. But I also hasten to add that it's for all of the things that we could tick off saying, well, yes, Kashmiris have suffered, Chechens have suffered, and so on. Bin Ladenism never became a mass movement. I mean, it never really, this is the encouraging thing, right, about ideology. I mean, I think the blood on his hands always limited his appeal among Muslims and others. But Bin Laden did have, there's a great book by a great scholar at UC San Diego, Jeremy Prestholt, who read a great book about global icons in which he has Bin Laden, he has Bob Marley, he has Tupac. He asked why, when he was doing research in East Africa, why did he see young kids wearing Bin Laden shirts? They're also wearing like Tupac shirts. They're wearing Bob Marley shirts. And basically it's a way of looking at a kind of partial embrace of some aspects of the rebelliousness of some of these figures, some of the time, by some people under certain conditions.
Well, the terrifying thing to me, so yeah, there is a longing in the human heart to belong to a group, and a charismatic leader is somehow, especially when you're young, just a catalyst for all of that. And I tend to think that perhaps it's actually hard to be Hitler. So a leader so charismatic that he can rally a nation to war. And Bin Laden, perhaps we're lucky, was not sufficiently charismatic. I feel like if his writing was better, if his speeches were better, if his ideas were stronger, better, it's like more viral, and then there would be more people, right, kind of young people uniting around him. So in some sense, it's almost like accidents of history of just how much charisma, a particular evil person has. Like Bin Laden.
I think it's fair. Evil works, I think.
So you think Bin Laden is evil?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was a mass murderer. I'm just saying that his ideas they're more complex than we've tended to acknowledge. They have a wider potential resonance than we would acknowledge. I mean, and also, I guess just one fundamental point is that thinking about the complexity of Bin Laden is also a way of removing him from Islam. He is not an Islamic thinker. He is a cosmopolitan thinker who plays in all kinds of modern ideologies, which have proven to mobilize people in the past, right? So, anti-Semitism, populism, environmentalism, and the urging to do something about humanity, do something about suffering. That's why I think you ask about what motivates people to do this kind of stuff. I think that's why if one goes below the level of leadership, and this is being reported, if you look at the trial ongoing now in Paris of the Bataclan murders, I think the court allowed some discussion of the backgrounds of the accused, and they come from different backgrounds, but if there's any common bond, it's kind of that they had some background in petty crime. Famously, in the 7/7 bombings in London, the Metropolitan Police, UK authorities looked at all those guys, and what people want is this idea that they must be very pious, they must be super Islamic to do this kind of stuff, they must be fanatical true believers. But what they found with those guys was that some were nominally Muslim, some went to mosques, some didn't. Some were single young guys with criminal backgrounds. Some were sorry, they were kind of misfits who never succeeded in anything. But others had at least one, I think, had a wife and family who he widowed and orphaned. And so there's no, for policing, if you're looking at it through that lens, there is no kind of typology that will predict who will become violent. And that's why I think we have to move beyond thinking about religious argumentation narrowly or by itself, and think about things like geopolitics. Think about how people respond to inequality, the existential threat of climate crisis, of a whole host of matters, and think about this is a mode of political contestation. I mean, it's a violent one. It's one I condemn. It is evil, right? But these are people they're trying to be political. They're trying to change things in some way. It's not narrowly about like, I want to impose Sharia law on you. You must wear a veil. You must eat this kind of food. It's not that parochial. But another quick thought about your interesting claim about charisma in this. I think that the one self-limiting feature of this subculture is that definitely, I mentioned the enigma of not wanting to be seen, and that the kind of invisibility is a productive force of power. Which a colleague of mine who knows ancient history far better than I, said, oh, this is, when she looked at Mullah Omar initially, or we talk about bin Laden, I mean, this kind of studied posture of staying in the shadows, is also a source of authority potentially, because it invites the idea, and it's partly dictatorships do this as well. I mean, it invites the idea that someone's working, and maybe it's the basis for a lot of QAnon or other conspiracies today, that someone's working behind the scenes and things are going to go the right way. You can't see it, but that's almost preferable because you can kind of feel it. And so not having someone out front can maybe more effective than having someone out in front constantly. Then
Maybe.
And then the whole bin Laden, Mullah Omar thing, like, you can't see me. Or if you look at, bin Laden's photographs and his video stuff, I mean, he's coy. Some observers have noted that he's kind of effeminate. He doesn't strike this kind of masculine. He's not a Mussolini. He's not a Hitler, macho. I'm thumping my chest. He's not doing the theatrical chin, that theater people tell us is so aggressive.
Oh, a chin? What? Bringing your chin up?
I saw a great BBC theater person. It was kind of a makeover show about how to become a better
dictator. Oh no, just a powerful, leader, authoritarian figure.
No, just how to like get ahead in life, and then
okay, cool.
And just like about acting, like how you can act differently, right? So it was a BBC thing. And this woman claimed that sticking your chin out like a wrestler does, right, is the most like male to male.
I love this kind of
most aggressive,
hilarious analysis that people have about power.
But watch the chin. Watch the chin.
It's the same as analyzing, like, in wrestling, styles that win, or fighting, or so on. There's so many ways to.
Well, the chin. I mean, the chin could be an interesting verbal gesture, and I've watched enough Mussolini footage for my classes to try to pick the right moment. And the chin Mussolini's all about the chin. So,
and I have watched human beings and human nature enough to know that there's more to a powerful man than a chin.
Yeah, no. I'm saying it's an act of aggression. I'm not saying it's
one of the many tools in the toolkit. So,
sure.
So he definitely.
It's not all about the chin, but it's a.
But that's what I'm trying to tell you about bin Laden. I don't think he was deliberate enough with the way he presents himself.
So what I'm saying about bin Laden that makes him different from these other characters is that because he played at being the scholar, he played at being a figure of modesty and humility. And that meant that he was often, again, if you watch his visuals, I mean, yes, there's one video of him firing a gun, but if you watch how he moved, how he wouldn't look at people directly, how his face was almost, I mean, he appears to be incredibly shy. Mm-hmm. He's soft-spoken, his voice was low. He attempted to be poetic, right? So it wasn't a warrior kind of image that he tried to project of like a tough guy. It was, I'm demure, I'm humble, I'm offering you this message, and that the appeal that he was going for was to see to project himself as a scholar, whose knowledge and humility, the whole package, carried with it an authenticity and a valor that would inspire people to commit acts of violence, right? And so it's a different kind of like logic of like,
yes,
go and kill, right?
So he presented himself in contrast to the imperialist kind of macho power,
bombastic,
superpowers.
Whatever. Yeah.
So that's just yet another way of And you have to have facial hair or hair of different kind that's recognizable. He had a very recognizable look too, or at least later in life. So,
Yeah, no, he tried to look the part.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
but I'm saying more fortunate that whatever
right.
calculation that he was making, he was not more effective.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the world is full of terrorist organizations, and we're fortunate to the degree any one of them does not have an incredibly charismatic leader that attains the kind of power that's very difficult to manage at the geopolitical level.
Yeah, we credit the publics, who don't buy into that, right? Who see through this. We credit the critics, very early on, going back to 9/11 itself. One of the problems was that U.S. government officials kept kind of leaning on Muslims to condemn this, as if all Muslims shared some collective responsibility or culpability. And in fact, dozens of scholars and organizations, hundreds, condemned this, but their condemnations never quite made it out. But it created a tension where, if you wore a veil, you must have been one of them, and you must be on Team Bin Laden. And so a lot of the, I think a lot of the popular violence and discrimination and profiling came out of that urge to see a oneness, which, Bin Laden projected, right? He wanted to say, we are one community. If you are a Muslim, you must be with me, right? But I think that's where the diversity of Muslim communities became important, because outside of small pockets, I mean, they didn't accept his leadership, right? Mm-hmm. People wore T-shirts in some countries. I mean, non-Muslims wore T-shirts because he stuck it to the Americans. So in Latin America, people were like, yeah, that was sad, but finally, I mean, there was a kind of schadenfreude in that moment internationally.
It's like Che Guevara or somebody like that.
Che's the other character in Pressel's book. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's just a symbol. Yeah. It's not exactly what he believed or the cruelty of actions he took.
Right.
It's more like he stood for an idea of revolution versus authority.
That's right. And that's a great way to understand Bin Ladenism and the whole phenomenon. But I think looking at the big picture, it's also, you wonder, will that ever end, right? I mean, that's the risk of being a kind of hyperpower, like the U.S., where you, in insisting on a kind of unipolar world in 2001, 2002, 2003, I think that created an almost irresistible target, wherever the U.S. wanted to exert itself militarily.